Welcome to your favorite news channel. Today we have a new story coming in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so let's get into it. 3 members of a Scots supergang have been locked up after a deadly campaign of murder and violence. Barry Harvey, Thomas Guthrie, and Darren Owen were found guilty after a mammoth 12-week trial at the High Court in Glasgow. Former footballer-turned-assassin Harvey was convicted of gunning down gym boss Gary Moore, 32, on the doorstep of his home in Airdrie, Lanarkshire on September 6, 2018. The 35-year-old Barry Harvey, called a cold-blooded killer by prosecutors, was paid for the hit, which saw him splash out on a shiny new set of turkey teeth. Harvey was also later involved in the murder bit of drug dealer Scott Bennett, 43, who was shot outside a vet's in Rutherglen, Lanarkshire on December 3 of that year. Guthrie, already serving a life sentence for being the getaway driver in the Moore killing, was convicted for his role in the Bennett attack. The 27-year-old was separately guilty of the brutal slashing in the attempted murder of lawyer Joe Shields, 68, outside his office close to Glasgow Sheriff Court on July 19, 2018. Owen, 23, was found to have murdered Rafael Lyko, 36, whose remains were discovered in a burned-out Mercedes in Blantyre, Lanarkshire, on February 11, 2019. Co-accused Thomas Wilson, 26, was found not guilty of murdering Mr. Lyko. Owen was further convicted of being part of the vet's shooting of Bennett. It is believed that the gang are linked to notorious brothers Barry and James Gillespie, whose crime network once spanned the globe. Former Partick Thistle youth player Barry Harvey was caged in 2007 for 9 years as a teenager for a savage knife attack on Thomas McCairns. The hitman was described to a court as being an enforcer and top dog, while subservient, Guthrie did his bidding. Judge Lord Clark told the trio, "By the verdict of the jury, you have been convicted of very serious offenses." Harvey did not attend the verdict due to ill health. However, the judge stated, he can be made aware that the sentence for murder is fixed by life imprisonment. Darren Owen was also told by the judge to expect life behind bars. The High Court in Glasgow heard that Mr. Moore owed a drug debt of £100,000. He was repeatedly visited by a so-called friend on the run-up to his murder by Neil Anderson, who was later given a life sentence for his involvement in the killing. Guthrie and Harvey went on a reconnaissance mission of the scene the night before Dad, Mr. Moore, was murdered. The Skoda getaway car was spotted near Mr. Moore's home around 10 p.m. Harvey's phone was stated to have been turned off at the time. Guthrie's phone later made a call for a taxi from his house to Maryhill, where Harvey's girlfriend Carly Montgomery was living at the time. The next day, Mr. Moore was lured from his home by his so-called friend Neil Anderson, where they had a brief conversation. The Skoda then pulled up and covered-up gunman Barry Harvey emerged from the car. Harvey blasted Mr. Moore 9 times to his head and body before he ran back inside the vehicle and fled the scene. The Skoda was found burnt out later that night. Harvey and Guthrie's associate Scott Brown gave vital evidence at the trial, which helped convict the men. He claimed he bade Guthrie to follow the Skoda to a farm in Baldernick, East Dunbartonshire, where it was set afire. He then drove the pair to a property and they went off into another room before Mr. Brown left. Guthrie at the time of the shooting was using a phone which belonged to his dad, which was later seized by police. On hearing this, Guthrie was noted to say to his dad, "Everyone is fucked. Barry's bird." Prosecutor Lorraine Glancy said in her closing speech, Harvey was a cold-blooded killer carrying out a job or hit for payment, which went to his house and a holiday to Krakow with his girlfriend. It was stated that Harvey paid £200 for the flights, which was suggested was proceeds from the murder. Miss Glancy added, there was funding of turkey teeth acquired by Harvey. The Crown say this is additional expenditure which arises from the payment for the murder of Mr. Moore, which took place a few weeks before. Guthrie was earlier involved in the attempted murder of solicitor Joseph Shields Yards from his city centre office. Mr. Shields defended a Scots crime gang headed by David Sell, who was caged for 16 years in 2018 for an abduction and torture of drug dealer Robert Allen. Miss Glancy said, Thomas Guthrie carried out this cowardly unprovoked assault on Mr. Shields. We know from CCTV the attacker was waiting for some time for Mr. Shields to emerge from his office at the end of the day. The injuries sustained by Mr. Shields were significant. He had multiple injuries and required medical treatment. He had a cut from his ear to the corner of his mouth and another to the right temple, which needed 10 stitches. He had a cut on his right cheek and defensive injuries to his hands as he tried to protect his face. He also had slashes to his back. Mr. Shields was helped back into his office by witness and colleague John McGuire, who rang 999 for help. The advocate depute added that there was an obvious danger to his life had he not received medical treatment. The getaway vehicle used in the murder bid was found burned out in the same location used to set fire to the car used in the Mr. Moore murder. Drug dealer and dog breeder Bennett was shot once on the head as he was sat in his van outside a vet's in Rutherglen. Another reconnaissance mission of the area took place in the lead-up to the attempted murder. Phone numbers relating to Harvey and Owen hit cell sites, which were in key areas including the vets. Guthrie meantime failed to attend work on the day of the shooting and his phone was turned off. Miss Glancy referred to the evidence of Miss Montgomery's brother David Monroe, who gave Harvey an alibi that they watched a Celtic match together the night before. The depute stated, this would not have affected him during the reconnaissance. CCTV of the incident showed Bennett pulling into a parking space in his van and was joined by another vehicle beside it. Shooter Harvey then emerged and was seen to point the firearm at Bennett's vehicle. A joint minute of agreed evidence said, Bennett was found to have sustained a single gunshot wound to the left side of his face. The bullet entered his jaw, passed through his teeth and tongue and lodged in his neck. It was stated that the bullet cut Bennett's tongue and his injuries required stitches. Bennett was seen to be able to flee the scene in his van immediately after the shooting. Miss Glancy said, he was sitting waiting for something or someone. What takes place is a pre-planned attempt at an execution. The Crown have established beyond reasonable doubt that this was committed by Guthrie, Harvey, and Owen acting together. Each had a role to play. Harvey was the gunman when he acted in concert with Guthrie as he did in the Gary Moore murder. Both acted in concert with Owen. After the shooting, Harvey and Miss Montgomery went to Australia with flights costing £1,000. Miss Glancy said, this is a significant sum to be spent on a holiday for someone without legitimate income. Bennett was locked up for 4 years and 8 months in 2022 after he pled guilty to being involved in serious organized crime and the supply of controlled drugs. Polish national Mr. Lyko was murdered and left in a burning car, which Miss Glancy stated was related to drugs and drug debt. Mr. Lyko told his cousin that he was to return to Scotland to be set up with a job in Valencia to work off the debt. A Mercedes GLE vehicle was stolen in Edinburgh meantime, which was later used in the murder of Mr. Lyko. Mr. Lyko in his own Mercedes was picked up by the GLE vehicle in Cambuslang, Lanarkshire, around 7:30 p.m. on the night of his murder. Mr. Lyko was then driven to Blantyre, Lanarkshire, where he met his fate. Miss Glancy said, 11 minutes later the car was ignited. Mr. Lyko was shot once in the vehicle that was recovered. The hearing was also told Owen was involved in the collection of the stolen GLE car from a Michael Heaps. The car was parked at a location on East Kilbride, Lanarkshire, and cell site analysis showed that the vehicle was subject to checkups by Owen on the lead-up to the shooting. There was no cell site analysis linked to the pair at the location on the day of the murder. Miss Glancy suggested that an encrypted mobile phone was used. Sentence was deferred pending background reports until next month at the High Court in Glasgow. All 3 men were remanded in custody meantime. Following the verdict, Gary Moore's father, Lindsay Moore, and his wife Margaret said, "We would like to thank Police Scotland and everyone who has worked so hard to secure this conviction today. Gary is missed every day. These people have robbed him and us of our future, blowing our family apart. Life will never be the same again. We will be forever grateful for the support that we have received from the police and court liaison, for their unwavering understanding and support, and seeing us through the most devastating time of our lives. Nothing will bring Gary back, or mend the devastation to the family, but we take comfort now that justice has been served." Gary's mother Angela and sister Lindsay added, "Gary was a much-loved dad to 2 young children. He was a son, a brother, a nephew, an uncle and a friend to many. He will be remembered by us every day as a gentle giant with the best laugh. He loved the gym, loved listening to his favorite songs on repeat, but most importantly loved his family, and was loved in return by them. Those responsible for his death will now face the consequences of their actions, but what they don't realize, or care about, is that we will also suffer from their actions for the rest of our lives too. We would like to thank our key workers from Victim Support Scotland who have and continue to help and support us. Also, our dedicated VIA officer who has supported us immeasurably through both trials. We would also like to say a massive thank you to Police Scotland, the advocate deputies and the prosecution team who have worked relentlessly and with the highest levels of professionalism to ensure Gary's killers were held to account for his murder. And we would like to take a moment, offer our deepest sympathy and condolences to the victim's family and friends.